Askwomen. What is the most special thing a loved one has done for you? And happy Women's Day to all the lovely women out there. Heart, edit, thank you for all the comments and upvotes, they just made my day. Heart, smiley face. When my boyfriend who I lived with at the time broke up with me unexpectedly, I became very depressed and couldn't eat. A few days before I was going to move out, my parents came over to our apartment with my favorite meal and my mom helped me pack and did a deep clean of the entire place. The landlord was so pleased with how clean it was, she removed all penalties against me for breaking the lease early. When I got home to my mom and dad's place, which I was moving back into, I came home to a newly renovated bedroom with a new flat-screen TV mounted to the wall. I was still heartbroken, but I felt so loved and so supported during a very dark time. I'll cherish that forever. My grandmother passed away about 2 months before my wedding. I was really close to her and took it pretty hard. I was devastated she didn't know I was getting married. We had a small ceremony with a short lead up, she would have been ecstatic. My grandmother was an avid knitter, as much of my family. It's a tradition in my maternal family that when someone gets married, one of the women knits the new couple a granny square afghan. My mom still has the one knit by her grandmother. After my grandmother passed away, my mom found a bunch of squares for an unfinished blanket and knit them together for my husband and I for our wedding. Words can't express how thankful I am that my mother gave me one last knit gift from my grandma. Edit grammar. My mental health took a pretty big dip after my medication stopped working. I had been on it for 7 years. This happened to be right after I got married. My husband spent the next year taking care of me, working overtime, bathing me, feeding me, supporting me in every way, lifting my spirits, getting me out of the house, without a single complaint. He made me feel the farthest thing from a burden, which really helped because I felt so ashamed. It's been almost 2 years out of work, but I'm the best I've ever been. My husband's sacrifices empowered me to do everything I had to get better, and it will continue to motivate me to be the best wife I can be. Because my husband deserves the best. And I'm learning that I deserve that for myself as well. On Valentine's Day, my fiancé bought ingredients to cook all of our favorite meals from traveling together. We had the onion soup from Lyon, tiramisu from Venice, and hot toddies from Copenhagen. We used to travel a lot together. Now we have a 6-month-old son, so going out wasn't on the cards, but this was very special to me. I never had a good relationship with my dad. He can really fuck with someone's head. We fight all the time, and eventually I became kind of immune to it. Like, it doesn't get to me anymore. I used to cry out of sheer frustration, and now I just make sarcastic jokes. The other day we were having the biggest fight in a while, and he went to the kitchen to close some cabinets with extra strength hot to show me how mad he was. And I was in the living room with my little sister. So I'm about to say a dumb joke and she gets up and hugs me really tight. And I break down and cry like I haven't in years. It might be dumb, but it really was the kindest thing anyone had done for me in years. It was something about the way she held me. I usually don't like physical touch, but in that moment I felt safe. It was a rough week at work and we were both exhausted. He fell asleep way before I did. I was awake checking my work emails when he turned around in his sleep and kissed my back about a dozen times and then went right back to snoring. He didn't recall doing it the next morning. On my second date with my current boyfriend, I had a panic attack. I was so embarrassed and I for sure thought I had just ruined any chance I had with him because of it. Well, he asked for another date, and the next time I saw him he had researched panic attacks and how to help me if I had another one while with him. It's been 6 months and now I don't get them half as frequently, and I've gotten so much of my life and confidence back because of him. My brother had moved 16 hours away. And all I wanted for my birthday last year was to have my whole family together. He flew up here to surprise me on my birthday. It was the best gift I could have asked for. My whole family together. My ex wore my old continuous glucose monitor, despite not being diabetic, for a whole week and tested his blood sugar before and after meals during World Diabetes Month to support me, a type 1 diabetic. It really meant a lot, and afterwards he seemed to have a better understanding of what it's like to constantly have things attached to you. When I was in high school, my senior year, my dad's abuse had gotten super bad and I ran away. In the midst of all the crazy, my mom was trying to guilt me hard into coming back to that hell, but my grandma gave me the option to stay with her the rest of the year and however long I needed, and she would go out of her way to drive me to and from school and to and from my boyfriend's house whenever I wanted. I look back at it now and realize how much I probably was a bit of a burden on her and how much gas and time she had to waste, but she never once complained or made me feel like I was one, and I can never thank her enough because without her I would have felt so trapped and probably would have either gone back or jumped in front of a train. She's amazing and I try my best to thank her in little ways every day. My ex's mom is obsessed with Christmas and my family doesn't do much for it. It's more of a tedious ritual meal than an experience, and I grew up really hating the holiday because I never experienced any of the warmth or happiness people supposedly get from it. Actually, I hate it passionately to this day. That year I was having a particularly shitty time, and I didn't get so much as a chocolate bar from my family. I was kind of angry, but whatever. A few days later, my boyfriend came over and brought a gift from his mom, the nicest set of PJs I've ever had, and Christmas socks. Maybe not the coziest but super pretty, and I loved them. Made me really feel like a part of their family for a bit. Years later, I still love those PJs, even though we're not in contact at all. I still think about how kind and accommodating he and his family were to my dysfunctional ass, and how much little things like that meant. My sister stayed with me while I was in labor for 2 days, then was in the delivery room with me when my ex-husband was not able to be there at that time. When I was going through severe depression, my best friend, who I'd only known for 2 to 3 months at the time, stuck by me. Through my extreme lows and irrational behavior and me being quite rude and closed off, she tried her best to spend time with me and was always there even when everyone else had left me. I'll never forget that and cherish and love her more every single day. We had bought an older house, and about 8 months later found out I was pregnant. MISO immediately decided to replace all the old water lines so it's healthier for baby and me. Adopted me. I know for a fact I would not be in such a good position in life as I am if I wasn't adopted, so I thank my mom often. I was rejected for an internship that I was supposedly the frontrunner for, and as a rejection in a long academic year of things mostly not going my way, I took it pretty badly. My parents drove all the way to my apartment to see me, and my friends spent a long time on the phone with me and ranted at the supervising panel with me, and I felt loved and supported even though I didn't feel worthy of any of it at the time. Hard times suck and I don't know what I'd do without my parents and this one friend of mine. My best friend indirectly said to me, "You make me want to be a better person," and as somebody who constantly feels like a horrible person, it made me feel like I was doing something right. My partner, being the best uncle ever to my sister's kids, has brought so much meaning and happiness into my life. When we first got together, he was in his early 20s, and was so happy to play with and support the kids. He saw a need in my messed up family and filled it wholeheartedly. Now, a decade later, it still brings me so much joy and security to hear him teaching them spelling or asking them about their days and really listening to them. Heart. I ended a long-term relationship, drove heirs home. My parents drove me back with a trailer to collect my things. Paid for everything, including gas and hotel. It was then I really realized how fortunate I am to have them to support me in that way. My bestie, sister, and sister-in-law organized a fundraiser to replace my wheelchair-modified car. My son is a quadriplegic. I'd already replaced the motor in my car twice and just couldn't afford to do it again, emotionally or financially. I'm independent and find it almost impossible to ask for help, but they wouldn't relent and they honestly changed our lives. Every single time we get in that car, I'm so grateful to them and everyone who donated. They adopted me. Smile. During an intense depressive episode, my dad cleaned my room, which was filthy, for me, made my bed and everything. Really made me feel loved. My mom also took the time to learn about what makeup I like and then bought it for me as a grad gift. Also, if I say to her, "Can you please feed me/make me coffee?" she will do it, and it's really special to me. This won't sound like much, but my date mate and I were talking cakes for weddings, completely hypothetical, and when we were trying to figure out what kind, I offered a couple different kinds, because my mom and I both have severe allergies to a couple things, but we found safe cake for both of us. They immediately said no, we're just getting gluten-free. The fact that they wanted to make sure I didn't feel left out still makes me a little teary-eyed. Most people would just give me, or my mom, a small portion and say something like sorry, we didn't know what else to get. I just less than 3. I love geology/rocks/crystals/fossils/etc. and used to work at a geology store, and after I moved I showed all my friends my collection, but I can't get any more now. For my birthday I didn't have a party BC, everyone was on vacation, but one of my friends invited me over for a tea party when she got back. When I got there she said, "Oh yeah BTW, this is a surprise birthday party," and hauled out like 3 boxes and 2 water bottles filled to the brim of rocks on the beach and crystals from little shops and garnets from the river in Idaho. Everywhere she went on vacation that summer she'd been collecting rocks and crystals for me, and it took up most of her luggage on the plane ride back. It was one of the nicest things anyone has ever done for me. Not sure if this is an answer or not. I recently got married this past Thursday, March 5th, and I only had photographers there, no videographers. Well, we did our first dance, which I really wanted a video of, but I figured, oh well, we'll just have the memories, that's fine with me. Well, I received a text from my best friend, and he had recorded my husband and I's first dance. I didn't tell anyone I wanted it recorded, and it was a semi-small turnout, and I was unaware that many people were watching since I didn't have glasses or contacts in. I moved to a new state/transferred to a new university to be with my long-distance boyfriend. Leaving behind my friends and everything I knew was extremely difficult. One day I was working at the library of the new school and turned around to literally see my 3 best friends from my home state, along with my boyfriend in the background, standing in front of me. For a second my brain did not compute, then I burst into tears. My boyfriend had paid for all 3 of them to fly out for a visit, and they planned a hiking/road trip to Colorado. It was the most surprised I've ever been in my life. Oh. And my boyfriend had even arranged time off work for me, and I got to leave early that day. Smile. Gave me a kidney. My mom. She gave birth to me. I'm very thankful. Smile. I was struggling really hard with my mental health, was living in poverty, barely surviving off of about $500, $700 a month and frequent trips to food banks. My dad had just died and I was reeling. I was having nervous breakdowns daily. It was a very dark time. I started going to therapy and began pulling myself out of the darkness, and part of getting healthier was reconnecting with my mom. We'd had a tough relationship for most of my early 20s, and had never seen eye to eye. But we reconnected and became closer in the aftermath of my dad's passing, and one day my mom calls me out of the blue and asks if she can buy me a house. I was living in a rundown camper parked in the backyard of my boyfriend's parents' house. The toilet and shower didn't even work and we didn't have hot water. She told me that she received all this life insurance money because of my dad and she didn't know what to even do with it, and she said she just really wanted to help me out of my situation. So I accepted her offer, and soon after that she helped me again by buying me a cheap used car. And then she offered to pay for medication for me if I chose to see a psychiatrist about my mental illness. I felt ashamed to be in my 20s and receiving so much help from my mom, but I was not capable of caring for myself. My mental illness didn't let me grow up when I should have. So I accepted all her help, and now it's been about 4 years, and I am more stable mentally and financially than I have ever been. I'm paying for my own medication, I'm paying my taxes on time and all my bills on time. I'm really taking care of myself. And I really owe it to my mom for helping me get a footing in life. I don't know what I would have done if she didn't help me. I still feel some shame about not doing it all by myself, but I'm forever grateful. Me and her have a really good relationship now and we talk every day. She's my best friend. My high school best friend covered a favorite song for me as a birthday gift. The song was in a language I was studying, so she didn't understand it. She made lots of pronunciation mistakes, but no one had ever gone out of their way to do something that creative for me. Sat there crying in the middle of the hallway. Whenever I come home for vacation, my mom would always cook my favorite food, and I couldn't be any happier to be back home with my family. A close friend/coworker's brother died so suddenly right before Christmas. Another coworker/friend checked in to see if I knew how she was doing, and if there was anything she could do to help her. She then asked how I was doing. I said I was fine but feeling sorry for her. It turns out she was asking how I was, as she knew my mother had died recently and a death like this could be triggering. She wanted to make sure I was coping properly. This blew my mind and was so overwhelmingly kind and thoughtful. I think about it often. My boyfriend and I had been dating for 3 years when I moved away for school. We decided to try long distance since my program was only a year long, it's a postgraduate, and the school was only 3 hours away. The first time I came back to visit, he made me sit in the bedroom as he prepared a surprise. He led me out and I saw that he had set up his tiny dining table with a tablecloth, candles, flowers, and a meal he had made for me. I wasn't expecting that at all, as we had talked about going out to eat. Turns out he decided to make me dinner because he knew how much I was missing home-cooked meals while away at school. I thought it was the sweetest thing, and I've never felt so loved. It was exactly what I needed after being homesick for weeks. My mom flew to Colorado when I was deeply homesick, and she came and brought me home. She was suffering from a flare-up of her pre-existing illness, so her coming to get me was a pretty big deal. She's the best, heart. My significant other hunted down the remaining 3 colors of a mug set from Starbucks that was released 6 years prior. He asked me why I always used one mug, and I said I liked the way it fit my hands. It was so simple, but it took time and recognition that it would make my mornings just a bit better. Even though this occasion is not from one person, it's the most touching thing that has happened to me. My mother died after a few years of craziness, heart surgery with a stroke following. The new her was difficult to deal with. The day after the funeral, my son graduated high school, and a week after his graduation, my daughter was married. It was an emotional and busy time. After my daughter and son-in-law were announced married and walked down the aisle, my husband and I stood up to leave. The entire congregation applauded. I've never felt so much love. It is customary to applaud the bride and groom, but I have never been to a wedding where the parents were applauded as well. I felt as though the applause was for me and the struggle I had been through. After a big dangerous surgery, my mother flew across the country to help care for me. I really needed a shampoo, so she sat me on a shower chair and got in the shower with me to scrub my head clean. Gosh, that felt good. My dad adopted me when I was 4, when he married my mom, a young widow. He took care of us our whole lives. He died in June, and it was revealed we'll have taken care of us, my sister, and her sons the rest of our lives. He was the greatest man I ever knew. I never knew another father. As a teacher, I have seen plenty of stepdads and even biological fathers who were nothing but a source of misery and heartbreak to their children, so I know what a great gift our dad was in our lives. God rest him. Nothing major, but it's all the little things my fiancé does for me. He gets up a little earlier than I do. He always kisses my cheek or forehead or whatever he can reach without, supposedly, waking me up. He prepares a hot water bottle when I'm on my period, buys my favorite snacks, hugs me when I'm down, tries to remember everything about my friends, even those he never met. He brings mom flowers, talks about the military with my dad, asks my sister how school is going, helps my grandparents get in or out of the car. He does his fair share of the chores and takes me to dinner dates, musicals, you name it. Probably this shouldn't be special, but to me it is. My siblings helped me out when my parents bailed. They picked up the slack repeatedly when it counted, where my parents should have been the ones doing so. The odd thing to me is that they seem to forgive and forget with my parents, where I am holding a grudge. Every couple years they come to me with some sob story about how mom/dad did them wrong again. Not sure why they keep going back. But I love them and I hope they are happy. They saved me when I needed it most, and without expectations of payback or holding it over my head. My husband does lots of special things for me, But recently the most meaningful is that he gets up early in the morning to fix my breakfast, pack my lunch and make the coffee. He doesn't have to go to work until a few hours later, so his choice to help me instead of sleeping in is so very special. I appreciate most the handful of times that someone has really spent their time with me. People who have something else they could be doing, but show up to hang out or have lunch anyway. My best friend made an entire birthday cake for me with all the things I loved. It was really beautiful, and I appreciated it a lot. I bought an old car with intention of renovating it. Then I got pregnant and I had to put those plans on hold. My husband knew how upset I was that I couldn't indulge in my hobby. Even though he doesn't share my passion for working on it, well, he likes to drive it, but that's that. Last year we spent almost every afternoon for 3 months working on restoring undercarriage. It was really lots of hard work on top of him working full-time jobs, so I think this one is pretty special, if not the most special thing he did for me. He sent me a lot of funny memes to cheer me up when I was sad about a college rejection letter. I had to have a major super scary surgery, and spent the night in the ICU afterwards. The surgery had a lot of potential side effects, including seizures, blood clots, and strokes. I was absolutely terrified that something would happen, and I was afraid of spending the night alone. My husband, who had spent the day worried about me being in surgery for 5 hours, proceeded to spend the night in the ICU sleeping in a chair next to me, so I wouldn't be alone and afraid. He got almost no sleep. Someone else in the room had pneumonia and kept coughing until they vomited all night, and had to do a lot of things the following day to prep for me to come home, but he still stayed with me to make sure I wasn't afraid, and was able to relax enough to go to sleep. He's an incredibly thoughtful partner, but that is by far the most thoughtful and kindest thing he's done for me in our 10 years together. I, 21F, get into fights a lot with my dad, 56M, because he always has to have things his way. This time we were fighting about this internship I was applying for, and he wanted me to work on the application and submit it a month before it was due. I thought this was ridiculous because I had plenty of time to finish the application before it was due. I wanted to go over my SO's house, but he kept saying I didn't have my priorities straight and that I was lazy, and that when he was my age, he would have already been working 16-hour days 6 days a week. He pretty much didn't want me doing anything until I had this application sent in. Obviously I was upset because I feel like I worked very hard. I've been working in between classes, during summer break, and I've still made the dean's list 5/6 semesters that I've been in college. So him saying that I was lazy really stuck with me because I felt like I've worked really hard my whole life to get where I am now. Anyways, as my dad is yelling at me and saying how lazy and privileged I am, my twin brother comes out and says, "Can you just listen to her for a second? You're projecting and saying things that aren't true and just being stubborn." Then he went back into his room. That one line made me feel so much better, because when you get into fights with my dad, you just feel so unheard and like everything he's saying is actually true because nobody else in the family says anything and he always wins. After the fight, I gave my brother a hug and thanked him multiple times for standing up for me. I ended up doing my application anyways just to shut my dad up, and of course he said something along the lines of, "See? Don't you feel better?" But it still made me feel better that my brother was on my side. My BF once hugged me for an hour and a half before getting up, in his sleep. I'm not great with hugs, but this was so drowsy, so pleasant, and he kept pulling me back in when I tried to leave. He kept turning off the alarm too. And he is a bear in the mornings, so this was incredibly meaningful for me. This is dumb, but I recently made a goofy but sort of clever pun on Facebook, and my BFF popped up in the comments to add a little bit that made sure everybody got the joke. It was such a tiny, unimportant thing, but I love that we can count on each other to lift each other up like that. We can be each other's sidekicks from time to time. There's no competition between us, we like to make the other one look cool. It's the most simple thing, but he makes sure I have coffee every morning even though we are locationally challenged at the moment. Rub my feet, I'm on them all day. Mama, my ex-boyfriend, gave him 2 rings for him to wear and he used to love them really much, and he gave me one. That meant a lot to me. My brother has been my biggest support through my breast cancer diagnosis and treatment. I don't have a car, So he takes off every Monday to take me to my appointments, takes me to lunch afterward, and takes me grocery shopping before I have chemo so I don't have to worry about anything when I'm feeling my worst. The rest of our family lives back in our home state, so he's the only family I have here. I didn't have to ask for his help, and I try not to be a burden, but he chooses to be there for me. I don't know what I'd do without him. I really needed a reset in life, so my boyfriend invited me out for New Year's Eve to a really expensive hotel. He bought me a wild outfit to wear by surprise, took me to dinner, went through the town on a date, and then back to the hotel. Took a shower, and there were rose petals leading to the bed when I got out. This is really silly, and not really the most special thing ever, but it happened a couple of days ago, and this person is very special to me, so I can't think of anything else right now. I was visiting him at work the other day. He works as a chef on a ferry, and he was on dock for maybe 4 hours before taking off again. We were in his cabin for some fun times and cuddles, and I didn't have my socks on. I remarked how I really should cut my toenails since I kept accidentally scratching him with them. Without missing a beat, he asked me if I'd want for him to do it for me. I said yes. And he did. But not before hesitating first because he was afraid he'd hurt me. I took a picture and I love it. Then he sent me off with a box of wine, and I was, and still am, the happiest girl in the world. I can't really think of one thing, but my boyfriend is the king of the little things. He brings me my meds every morning. He cooks dinner almost every night, because he knows I'll be mentally exhausted when I get home. He even will dye and cut my hair for me. He's amazing. My girlfriend, although long distance, has done some pretty big acts too. At great expense to herself, she has sent my favorite chocolate from her home country. When she came to visit, she loaded herself down with gifts and treats, again at great expense to herself. My partners are amazing people, and I love them so much. Support my dreams. This probably isn't the most special, but it comes to mind. I was in my first quarter of college, and I had a ton of reading to for a class called Migration, Detention, and Sanctuary on top of exams to study for, etc. I was so overwhelmed, having a meltdown with my mom on the phone. She said, "Send me one of the readings, I'll read it and tell you what it's about for you." I insisted that was not necessary. She spent hours on this academic journal reading, and took notes on it for me even. She studied and worked in accounting. This was not her realm of expertise at all, but my tears went from stress tear to love tears when she called me to read me her notes. I can't even describe how much it meant to me. I would never expect anyone to do that for me, and that day reflects my mom's unconditional love for her family. My sister took me out to get my hair done and clothes shopping. And my family and I went on vacation, and I got to see my boyfriend for the first time. Family paid for the trip itself. Lived. My grandma was my best friend. I have crap parents who lied to my grandmother about me my whole life. As I got older, we sorted out the lies. We'd talk at least 3x a week, and she was my confidant. As she got older, she was constantly in and out of the hospital. I didn't realize how sick she was. I thought they just needed to find the right combination of meds for her and she'd be okay. In 2015, I was diagnosed with MS, chronic but manageable. I waited the longest 2 weeks to tell her because I didn't want her to worry. She yelled at me for not telling her sooner and said if I didn't have her, who did I have? Within a month, my grandmother decided to put herself into hospice and passed away. I only realized after that she was enduring suffering and life-prolonging medical treatment so I wouldn't be alone in this world. My husband was sending me on a trip to Mexico, alone. I have never been, and don't like traveling alone, so he surprised me by getting a ticket for one of my sisters. When I was going through a bout of depression, my cousin made me a pair of authentic moccasins completely by hand, even the beadwork. It must have taken her hundreds of hours. Happy Women's Day, everyone. Treated me better than I sometimes deserve to be treated when going through a tough time. I lashed out from hurt and still received love in return. That there is special. My first Christmas with my now husband, I was very broke and had very little money. My kids were likely not getting much for presents. I had one each for them, I think, and I was getting nothing for anyone else, and I had a couple bills behind. We hadn't been together very long, so I didn't really expect anything from him, like maybe a small gift at most. Well, he sent me to the bank for him. My son was hanging out with him and didn't want me, so I went, and told me to pull out $500. I said sure, because this wasn't out of the ordinary. He prefers cash, and when I got back he was like, "Merry Christmas, babe, get the kids some gifts and buy what you need," or something like that. Since then he's done many more nice things for me, but that one has always stuck with me. I never really expected him to do something like that, because he was still at the point where he still wanted the kids to call him by name. Shortly after this, though, we gave in and stopped trying to get them to stop calling him Dad. Forgiven me. Second to that, a song and a necklace. I did a really horrible, nasty, selfish thing that caused serious emotional pain to my sister. She was 1,000,000% within her right to never speak to me again. Probably could have even had the family not allow me at family stuff. I can't even type this without crying. That's how horrible of a sister I was, and how freaking amazing of a person she is. We did obviously have a fight about it. Or rather, she cleared her mind on me while I cried and apologized. She took some time to heal. And then she sent me a link to Brother by Need to Breathe. I think I cried intermittently for a week. I'm freaking bawling right now. Look up the song, it's powerful. Then months later, we were on a start to healing. She gave me a necklace. It has a bigger and smaller circle joined together, like Big Sis and Little Sis, and has a paper with a sentimental quote in the box. It's the thing I would save if the house was on fire, if I could grab one thing. Sorry if this was supposed to be like gift ideas or something. I guess I should have looked at other comments first. Me and my boyfriend are in a long-distance relationship, and when he came and surprised me a few years ago for our second anniversary of being together, that was really special. Sparkling heart. Sorry, I already commented one, but the second most special thing. Little background, my brother was basically both parents and my best friend growing up. As an adult, he developed alcoholism and a nasty temper, which is not something I'll have around my family, as it definitely won't help my husband's sobriety. I was having a complete "I miss my brother" meltdown one day, basically feeling like he died because he's not the same brother I grew up with, was crying to my mom. Then a while later my brother is at my door, and sober. This might not seem big, but he lives an hour away, gets up at 4 a.m. for work and stayed until about 10:30, and he knew that was what I needed, and ignored his own life and routine to do it. When I first started dating my boyfriend, I had a terrible cold but still really wanted to hang out with him. I went over to his house and he had gotten us dinner from my favorite burger place, queued up Harry Potter for us to watch, and bought me a new pillow for staying over because his were trash. It was that moment I knew I found one of the good ones. Never had a loved one. My husband and I were struggling hard financially. Our roommate was always late, our car was always having problems, and we have a child. I finally got to drive to my family's for a get-together, and my aunt and her husband pulled me aside and handed me $100. I just started crying big crocodile tears as she assured me there were no strings attached other than to call her if I needed help in the future. She is the same aunt who is the mom we wish ours was, so it really meant a lot. My sister took my son for a weekend. He's been dealing with emotional downs and struggling with loneliness and not having community or friends at school. She lives 3 hours away and is his favorite aunt. She is so amazing with him.